What's up, everybody? It's the No Name Cinema Society Sound Off. It's our freeform segment of the evening. We sort of end the evening with, sort of talking about a lot of things that we didn't get to talk about in our individual film reviews. Davie has his diatribe. J Money has things he want to talk about. I do a top 5 in every freeform segment, which isn't really that freeform, but I'm not a freeform kind of guy. I'm Jonathan Betzler, one of your hosts. The man with the diatribe is next, Davie Joe, who does not have his graphic up. He usually has a Twitter symbol. Oh, look at his face. He's like, oh, what happened? What happened there? But J Money does, shaking his head in disbelief. But J Money is now on Twitter, and ladies and gentlemen, he's active on Twitter. He's more active than any of us. So, if you're a Twitter person, then he's your man. There's Davie Joe. You can see his name spelling, you can see his Twitter handle, and everything. So it's freeform time. So I want to start with J Money, who you don't usually start with. And he's got something very specific he wants to talk about. It may be a little presentation, if you will. There's a recent occurrence here in New York City that he wants to share some thoughts on. Take it away, J Money.
That's true. I do. I'd like to talk a little bit about Shia L because he had a great PR stunt, if you want to call it that, in the last week or so at the.
Now, do you want to call it great, or by great do you mean like large?
Let's say that I call it great in terms of it being large at the moment. Shoot, I have to admit I
can't tell you lines are around the block.
All right. Apparently, I don't know where the graphic went.
Well, let's call it. This is not Davie's diatribe, but this is going to be J Money's diatribe.
Let me say this.
Do you need Davie to do his diatribe first while you look for something?
Actually, that would be. Wait, no, I just found it. If you want me to go ahead, let's do it.
Go ahead. We're ready. We're doing another intro. Oh, there he goes. He found one.
This is going to be possibly a recurring segment. Where's LaBouffe? It's the beef on Shia. Shia LaBouffe.
I think it's Shia.
Shia LaBouffe.
It's Shia, yeah.
Let's back up a little bit and talk about Shia LaBouffe. Shia LaBouffe, as an actor, has been in a lot of different movies. Has been in a lot of movies that people initially gave him some critical acclaim for. Then he was in some movies that people really criticized him for, obviously. Transformers probably being at the top of the list there. And since that time period, since the period of Shia LaBeouf becoming sort of a household name and him sort of dealing with the idea of him being famous, he had maybe some sort of nervous breakdown, or maybe he just had a hard time, sort of reckoning how he was supposed to deal with the idea of fame. And he has been on sort of a tear of, what he would describe probably as art performance pieces, just in general. What the media would certainly describe as just media stunts. What people in general have criticized him strongly for, in general. He did a thing, I think, in LA about 2 years ago, maybe, or last year, called I Am Sorry, which maybe JB went to. I don't know.
I did not.
You did not go to that. But are you familiar with I Am Sorry as a thing, JB?
Yes.
No, if people are not familiar, it was Shia LaBeouf in a gallery with a bag over his head, and he allowed people to kind of come in and interact with him with a series of different types of objects, including a whip and other things. Meanwhile, he was supposedly crying underneath the bag himself. It was a very heavy-handed piece. He got a lot of flack for it because obviously it was pretty steeped in self-pity in a lot of ways. But it was interesting because at the same time, I think that he was trying to talk about his own issues with his identity and how he had lost his identity through his work. He's had a couple other incidents. He certainly is known for walking, I think, the Cannes Film Festival with a bag over his head that said, "I am not famous anymore." Again, a little heavy-handed. He's been arrested a few times because who hasn't really in a situation. But then a few weeks ago, something suddenly came upon the world. It was his new project, which was I Am. What was it? Oh my God, I still don't have it happen. All my movies, which was about him basically camping out in the Angelica Theater in New York City and literally doing that, literally watching all his movies. And let me see here if I can find my little. There we go.
So for those of you who don't know, Angelica is a famous indie movie art house in New York.
Here it is right now.
For a long time. Oh, and he's got a photo of it.
Got a photo of it right here. It's down on Houston Street.
That's a great photo. You didn't take that, did you?
Wouldn't it be wonderful I did? I would be a great photographer just taking this. Instead, I didn't take it as much as take it from the internet. So and that's life, isn't it? Life is about taking it from the internet. And the premise of all my movies is basically Shia LaBeouf decided to watch all his movies, all his main features, continuously over a 3-day period. So a solid, I don't know what that is, 72 hours of him sitting in the theater in the same spot watching his movies while live streaming his reactions to his movies. This was the kind of thing that at first people thought was a funny joke, and then it sort of gained critical acclaim. And I think that it's honestly not undeserved that it's gotten some positive praise. I really think that it's an interesting thing that happened. I think that it's very distinctly different than his other work in a lot of ways. And I want to back up, because really the big question is here, with this act, do we legitimize anything that Shia LaBeouf is doing in terms of him making sort of meta critiques of his place in infamy? And I want to put that out to you guys first. Did this affect your opinion about him in any way whatsoever?
No. I'm indifferent to it.
I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting. I like it. I thought it was a kind of a good idea, but I didn't like it so much that I looked at it at any point. So
you didn't ever turn it into the live stream?
I didn't. I meant to check in on it, but I never did.
I'm gonna throw up an image right now. This is LaBeouf reacting to, I believe, the end of Transformers 2.
But here's the thing. I mean, like, how can you? I mean, it's just, is it? How do you know how does he even know what's real and what's acting at this point?
Well, I think a lot of people have said that. I think a lot of people have said, well, maybe he was just kind of contriving his emotions to time with things. I would argue that if you're through an endurance intensive, situation of 72 hours, and if you're really, if you're sitting in a theater, in a dark theater, watching a movie, you sort of lose that aspect. You sort of lose your ability to concentrate on how to control your emotional features. And I think that was something that really drew people into watching the live stream. I think that there was, in effect, a sense of you being able to see a very stripped down and very relatively sincere reaction from his face about his own work.
Now, looking at that picture, are you sure that that's a sincere reaction? Because that feels a little...
Well, he's been very critical of his own performance in that movie, or that movie, just his involvement with that movie in general. Whether or not that was sincere, I don't know.
Was it his performance or just the movie?
Guys, we're going to call a quick timeout as my hosts have arrived home. I have to acknowledge the sound. Oh, just one of the hosts? No. There's the other one. You guys remember Greg?
Hey,
Greg.
Greg, it's J Money, and come on in, Vanessa.
Hey guys.
This is Vanessa.
Hey,
she lives
Vanessa.
here now. You probably met J Money at some of the screenings before.
Yes.
That's not his real name. You know him by a different name, but you've never met Davie Joe from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Hi, Davie Joe.
Also not his real name.
Spoiler
alert.
What's your name on this?
This is Davie Joe.
No, it's Davie.
I'm myself.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why are you guys making up names? And I'm guessing.
They're shy. they're afraid of their personal lives. Where's Greg? Greg, you coming in?
I'm taking care of business.
Greg has to go to the bathroom. So we're talking about LaBeouf.
Hope everything comes out all right.
Yeah. And we're live too.
We're recording?
Oh yeah, we're live, baby.
Really?
Live out on the internet. Greg needs to pee.
That's just sad.
Back to LaBeouf.
Fantastic, yes. I mean, I think that there were certain things people were expecting certain reactions from him from certain works, definitely. But I think ultimately, if you've ever spent 72 hours doing any one thing, I just don't honestly believe you can control yourself in a contrived manner for that long. I don't. I think that he...
I mean, did he not sleep? Was there not sleep?
There were times when he definitely took naps, yeah, but it doesn't... I mean, I think...
The movies didn't stop in spite of...
Sorry?
The movies did not stop?
Movies did not stop. He slept through certain parts of his movies, definitely, and there are great GIFs that are going around right now on the internet showing side-by-sides of the movies that he was watching as he was watching them, and it's great to see his reactions. And I think in general, people, I'm going to throw up another one here. This is him reacting to some of his really early work. It was a Disney thing that I can't remember the name of right now. But, I mean,
The greatest game ever played?
Well, maybe. I don't know. It was Before Holes. That's all I can remember. There's a quality to watching somebody in this situation. I mean, theater, as just an environment, is a relatively intimate experience. I mean, it's something in the dark. They're completely disarmed because they're completely absorbed in this thing in front of them. They're totally about reacting, and I think the idea of giving him people in general the opportunity to watch him react in that environment actually maybe kind of legitimized his point about his identity. I think that people maybe connected with him in an emotional way, much differently than he had done before. Because, frankly, everything he had done before seemed like whiny bullshit. It seemed like him, flagellating himself in front of people to say, like, look at me, I have this identity that's been completely torn apart because of the general, mass populace and people criticizing me, and I'm sorry about it. Him trying to be wallowing in the self-pity is one thing, but him, as somebody that had produced work, and then, as an audience that watched him view his own work, that's a different process. That's not confrontational with an audience. That's watching somebody else, view their own critiques internally. And I think that's something that people really connected with. I mean, I honestly, going into this whole stunt, was very critical. And then I turned him on for a few minutes here and there throughout the 3 days, and yeah, I changed my opinion. I think that he actually is getting to some place now, which is interesting. So, here's my big question to you guys. Do you think that this is a breakthrough in any way for Shia LaBeouf in terms of his personality in pop culture?
Probably not. I mean, not that I don't think it should be. I mean, like, and my comment, my reaction is coming from how he will be perceived. Like, I think you put a lot of thought into it, which is cool. And everything you said makes sense to me, and I acknowledge all that. And yeah, I think that the majority of people will not take that amount of time that you did to think about it, and will like automatically snipe and
Certainly.
and go for the crackpot argument and things like that. So and I think that's a vicious cycle. I think the more people call him a crackpot, the more he'll act out on that.
Well, I will say this. So far, the response in terms of just general tweeting and things like that has been fairly positive. I mean, obviously, there are always people that are going to make jokes at his expense. But certainly compared to, like, everything else he's done in the past, the media on a whole has sort of taken his side in this one, and it seems like the general population might also have sort of taken his side in this one. And I think it brings up another...
I've seen totally different... I mean, I have not seen any of that positivity, which is I'm glad it's out there.
Okay. I mean, I don't know what I would tell you, but I mean, it feels like there's been a lot of fairly positive, critical sort of reaction to this.
I'm taking your word for it. I'm just saying, like, I've definitely seen internet stuff about it, and it was all very judgmental.
Well, I think the other thing I want to raise about this is, like, at what point does an actor who has been sort of publicly, tarred and feathered, and we've seen a lot of actors go through that process over the years, at what point do they finally resolve their issues? At what point does the public actually really kind of, begin to forgive and adopt them again? What does it take?
They can, and the difference is just the work, honestly. Like, the work is going to make all the difference. And he's done good work. I mean, like, last year I lobbied for him to get a Best Supporting Actor nomination. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah, and he deserved it. He did.
He was outstanding in Fury. I know you still haven't watched it, have you, bastard?
Nope.
Watch Fury.
Episode 1. Go back and watch episode 1, everybody, of our Oscar preview. And Jay Money's like, I really need to see that Fury.
That wasn't an indie, was it?
No.
No, it was my #1 film of last year. It was during our Oscar preview.
If it was an indie, we could make him watch it.
Guys, I've had the Blu-ray sitting on my coffee table for the last 8 months.
All right. That's the first step.
I will.
Can you take a picture of it right now and then hold your phone up to the screen?
I would do that if you want me to.
I do.
All right, here we go.
Let's see it. Show us the Blu-ray.
I want hard proof, because I'm going to tweet David Ayer and let him know that I've been pushing this movie on you.
That's definitely true.
Here, and while we're waiting, I want to introduce you to Jay Money's friend Wallace, to the camera right side of the screen. Do you see Wallace there, Davie?
I'm supposed to be looking at his. Oh yeah, the turkey. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the turkey.
There's just one turkey now. Now
there's 2 in the screen. How about that? Oh, now it's getting weird. Show me. All right, Shia.
All right. Watch this before Google takes it down.
There it is.
Yeah. So I've had this thing around for a while.
Right now, promise the audience that by episode 21, you will have watched Fury and we can talk about it in the sound off.
Whoa.
No, 21? Are you kidding me? I'll watch it by episode, 35. That seems
All right.
Episode 21 is like 3 weeks away. It's actually a month away. December 21st.
Star Wars at some point between then and now. You know how hard that's going to be? That's like a near impossible task in this.
You're going to watch all 7 of them?
You need to watch all 6?
Yeah, let's watch all of them together. That's a good idea.
Actually, you can do that. There's a screening.
There must be theaters that are doing that, right? Yeah?
There are, yes.
Yeah.
So the other thing about Shia that I wanted to say is the first time I ever saw him, I thought he was outstanding. Like immediately, I thought he was a special actor, and he isn't. He's never disproven that. Even in Transformers, he's got presence.
He's fine.
And the first time I saw him was in the second Project Greenlight winner, a film called Battle of Shaker Heights, which is a terrible movie, but he is a standout. Like, you know, walk out of the movie and be like, that kid, it's not particularly good looking, but I mean, like, that kid's got something.
All right, so JB, since you're in his corner, what do you think is behind him sort of experimenting with all this performance art?
Restlessness, or I mean, like genuine curiosity about these things that he's looking into, and I mean, like at the root of it all, I would assume to be an armchair psychoanalyst is a discomfort with being a public figure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that a lot of people have sort of questioned his sincerity in his self-involvement with his performance art, which is fair because a lot of it seemed, you know, relatively self-piteous. But I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a guy that's really struggling with these issues, and he's just trying to figure out a way to actually make them into something, into a way to explore the idea of identity and the way that his identity has been subverted through his work. And I think that's actually interesting, ultimately. You know, I think that maybe at this point he's maturing to a point where it's going to become much more, I don't know, impressive work. Maybe he's going to do much more impressive performance art from now on. I don't know. We're going to see. It's kind of up in the air, but. You know.
Look, if there's an element in our society and in just the media in general, I think that they like pushing him because I think he's got some issues, and I really think that they like antagonizing him and they want to see what they can make him do, and I like the fact that he's just kind of doing his thing now, you know, and if this didn't seem to be you know, him whipping himself, you know.
Yeah.
So it's good.
So that's the Where's LaBeouf? I think that it might be a recurring segment if things go as Shia LaBeouf himself might plan.
Well, if you watch Fury for episode 21, then you can bring it back.
But then we know where LaBeouf is. He's in Fury.
Not your best argument that you've ever made. Davie, you ready for your segment?
Yeah, I am.
Boom!
Hey.
Davey's the quiet one in the bunch, but every once in a while he lets it loose. Now's the time. What's on Davey's mind this week?
Well, all right. So I was looking for Suspicion, and I noticed that it was on YouTube. The colorized version was on YouTube, and the whole concept of colorizing movies. It just seems like
it's sort of over, by the way. It was a trend started by Ted Turner in the 80s, but go ahead.
Well, this sort of filmatic necrophilia is really, it's not. It's you're talking about art, and you're talking about something that somebody made, and it's like putting the Mona Lisa on Photoshop and just repainting it. It's weird, and
I'm sure somebody's done. But go ahead.
Well, no, but But I mean, to sell it like that, I don't know. I find that to be tasteless and crass. I don't like it. It sucks.
You're not alone, and many filmmakers like Scorsese and Spielberg in the late '80s like really campaigned hard against, and eventually like they won. Ted Turner was a mea culpa on that one.
Did he? So he apologized for it? I mean, he's
apologized might be a strong word.
He was never. He never apologized for it. He's an asshole one way or the other. You can't. Really
he was like, okay, maybe that wasn't such the best idea. You know, like that was sort of like the summary statement there. I don't know if that counts as an apology.
Well, I mean he's done a lot of great things for the world of wrestling, so you know I can't fault him completely. But anyway, yeah, that was the diatribe. It's not much of a diatribe.
It's not bad, although it starts a new hashtag. Filmatic necrophilia, ladies and gentlemen. That's the new hashtag that comes out of the sound off. Hashtag filmatic, not a word, incidentally. But regardless, it's a hashtag. Filmatic necrophilia.
Let's get that trending. We gotta get that trending.
Let's get it trending as soon as possible. All right, speaking of Twitter and hashtags, we had a question, not necessarily sent to us, but we're going to answer it anyway, sent out to the universe by one of our followers, Classic Film TV Cafe. Asked people in general about to name their favorite hero out of AFI's top 5 heroes. If you remember, a couple years ago, AFI did a list of their top favorite heroes of all time. And actually, Davie, you have the list in front of you. Why don't you tell people what the lists are, 5 through 1?
Okay, 5 through 1. It's Will Kane in High Noon, Rick Blaine in Casablanca, James Bond in Dr. No, Indiana Jones in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird.
There you go. So those are the AFI ranked the top heroes of all time. They also did the villains, but Classic Film TV Cafe, which is at #classic_film, I believe, they asked for pick your favorite out of those top 5, so we thought we would answer that as part of our sound off. I've been letting Davie Joe go first for a while now, so let's even though J Money you talked for like 20 minutes, why don't you say your favorite of that top 5?
Well, what I would say is that I can certainly admire all the role models that are portrayed in the top 5 in general, and I initially I think I made one.
Suddenly, J Money's a politician. Look at this, very diplomatic.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, I think that they're all suave, interesting men. I think that they're all sort of men that can deserve some sort of accolades for whatever reason. They all have their own noble moments. But as I started to break it down in terms of what I thought was an actual hero, at least the idea of what a hero symbolized, and especially what it might have symbolized in terms of a movie character, it was actually easy to knock them out because I honestly don't think a lot of them really qualify into those terms. So my number 1 also happens to be the number 1 on the list. It'll be Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird.
All right. Well, I didn't think you would go there.
I'm just curious now. Where did you think I was going to go?
I thought you were going to go with me, but regardless.
They left you off the top 5 AFIs.
How did that happen? I don't know.
Oversight, no doubt.
He might be at 101. What I would say is that I think that Atticus Finch embodies the idea of an archetypal hero in a way that the other ones.
No,
perhaps...
I get all that, and I get why they chose him. I mean, in the movie itself, I feel like here's a little Joan Fontaine action. In the movie itself, I feel like he's a little overly righteous. Like it's a minor. Yes. I love the movie, but it's a minor thing, and that doesn't sit well with me. So it doesn't feel as three-dimensional for me.
Also, if you take into account the new book, Ghost at a Watchman, his reputation doesn't quite stand up apparently anymore. Yeah. So it really depends on how you want to interpret this, just in terms of the movies itself.
What a terrible idea! Can you, Davie, do a diatribe on that next time?
I can't. I don't even know if it's ethical to read that.
All right, Davie, who's your hero?
It's the same. It's the same hero. I think that the only one that really comes close is Rick. I think there's a lot of parallels there that I had never thought of until I looked at this list. So
they're so different, though.
Well, they are different, but they're also kind of kind of facing the mob and facing
I mean, like
the Nazis and then the lynch mob,
Yeah, but I mean, Rick's a lot shadier in a much realistic, more interesting way.
Yeah, well, it's more interesting in the sense that he's kind of coming around to it. There's a giant arc there, whereas
Atticus doesn't have one. Yeah,
right.
So
the heroism is there. I mean, he's standing up. I'm
not denying the heroism. I'm not denying.
So, and that's
Rick would be my second choice.
Yeah, so that's why I go with Atticus.
And the reason Rick would be my second choice as opposed to Atticus or my first choice is the three-dimensionality, the fact that they feel they're heroic in spite of their flaws. But the fact remains that, I mean, like when I did my top 5 last time, my Spielberg top 5, I mean, my favorite movie of all time was Raiders of the Lost Ark. How can I not go with Indiana Jones here? It's just so connected to me and who I am, and the movie informed me in so many ways. So did Indiana. It's the number 2 hero, and I think there's the parallels between Indiana and Rick Blaine. I think that is more of a parallel for sure. I mean, they both wear the fedora. In all seriousness, though, I mean, like they're both these flawed guys. You've got these goals that wind up, achieving things that, in spite of themselves. And realizing the right things to do is not always necessarily what they want to do.
So they're sort of like incidental heroes. I mean, they're sort of like serendipitously heroes, which I think.
But I mean, like that's to me greater heroism to some degree, or at least cinematically speaking. Like Davie Joe referred to the journey, and I think that is that's what makes these characters connect with me more. What were the other two, Davie?
Oh,
High Noon's another one. High Noon, Put Gary, anything Gary Cooper's in. Put him in with Atticus Finch. Like they're both a little too righteous, and moral outrage and righteous indignation for me.
And James Bond is the other one.
And James Bond, obviously we talked about James Bond ad nauseum last time. Big fan of the films, but as a hero, as a character, he doesn't have. And obviously Indiana Jones was somewhat derivative of James Bond, but improved upon him because James Bond's flaws, are not as potentially damaging to him. You know what I mean? Like they're cool. Even his flaws are cool. So that sort of zeroes him out, crosses him out in my book. And in that regard, I mean, like not against James Bond, obviously. We love James Bond, but when looking at these five.
All right. I mean, Indiana Jones, sort of a cultural appropriator, kind of evil in that way, in a lot of ways.
Oh boy. Wow. Okay.
So you're saying he should be on the villain list? Is that what you're arguing you're making now?
Well, I think it's a matter of perspective, isn't it? It's always about context, really.
Wow.
You're just effing with me right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, I think it gets back to what you're saying about the heroes in general. I think it depends on how you want to view a hero in this situation, because I think you're making a good point about how a lot of the characters that you're describing act heroically in a certain context. Absolutely correct. But whether or not they are...
Well, I mean, the point I'm making is when I'm watching a movie, like especially as I get older, and I guess even when I was younger too, because I discovered a lot of these movies when I was younger, the flaws of these heroes made them more human. Whereas Atticus and Will from High Noon, they felt too perfect in some ways.
I'm gonna can I make a quick case for Atticus?
Sure.
Yep.
The difference between him and Will is that I think that Atticus is much more weathered and much more kind of tired from the process and the fight. And I see a very human quality in the way that he's determined, in spite of the fact that he thinks he's against odds. Like there's a sense of fitting quality to what he's doing that to me is very much humanizing the character beyond the fact that it also stands for such these these crazy moral ideas.
Let's see if we can get Greg to settle this. He just walked by. Greg. Have you heard what we've been talking about? The AFI's top heroes?
No.
So a Twitter follower was asking the question to the world to pick our favorite hero out of the AFI's top 5. They are from 5 to 1. Will Payne from High Noon.
Never saw it.
Of course you didn't see it. Come down in here. What was number 4, Davey, remind me?
Rick.
Rick Blaine's 4?
Yes.
Yeah, he's got the blanket. 4.
What's my good side, guys?
That's the good side. Who's 3 then? If Rick Blaine was 4? Rick Blaine from Casablanca.
James Bond.
James Bond.
Oh, never saw it.
Shut up. Indiana Jones or Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird?
Well, my personal favorite has to be Indiana Jones. Come on. We're the product of the 80s.
QED.
But my question is this microphone like bad quality?
Why?
Because you're yelling at everyone. And I don't think you need to.
I'm keeping him up. He's in the room over there.
It's good to have Greg around.
But I don't think you need to yell. Is my point. You know what I mean?
Guys, am I talking too loud?
Always.
You get your point across.
It's part of my thing. It's my Kermit the Frog Regis thing that I do. It's our top 5 AFI heroes, guys.
Oh boy.
I'm excitable. I'm like the anti-Davie. Look at that. Look at Davie. All right, you guys ready to move on from the AFI?
Let's do it.
I think I want to thank Classic Film TV Cafe. I hope I'm saying that name right. I think it's at classic_film.com. At classic_film. Check them out. And thanks for bringing that topic up. We enjoyed discussing it. And now that we're at the halfway mark, it's time for this to happen. Ba-boom! Complete with musical accompaniment. Shark Show! Well, that's a good way to. That's a good place to end the music. Okay, cool.
You appreciate how Hitchcock himself is not really sure what your top 5 are?
Say that again?
Do you appreciate how Hitchcock himself is not really sure what your top 5 are in that little graphic?
He's like, I don't know. What could it be? Well, unfortunately, I think you guys might be disappointed in the sense that they're probably the obvious ones. We joked last week about how I could teach like a Spielberg class, just on Spielberg, because we did Spielberg's top 5 last week, or last time, I should say. But I think, but there are actually many universities have classes on Hitchcock alone. He's one of like a handful of directors that are studied frequently. In fact, we joke that we love Suspicion, but it wouldn't even make a top 10. And I could, and I feel like I have in the past made a top 10 Hitchcock before, and they'd all be great movies. Where I feel like a lot of filmmakers you can only really do a top 5 with. I think Jay Money even talked about he could do a top 10 too if he wanted to. At some point with Hitchcock, but because the top 5 is what we've been doing, we're going to stick with that. And there are there's some of the obvious ones. There's one obvious one that is not going to make the list. In fact, that it wouldn't even make my top 10, and I'm sure that'll be more controversy after all the under the skin controversy there's been tonight. There's going to be even more controversy regarding my top 5 or what's omitted from my top 5. 4 of the top 5 are on my top 100 of all time, and I was surprised to learn that the 5th one was not on there. I actually thought all 5 of these were going to be on there, and I actually thought they were in different order. And when I look back at my top 100, I did not see this film, so that's why it's at number 5.
Okay.
Love this film. This is you guys know what this is, right? You want to call it for me?
It's the Birds.
Birds.
What gave it away, Davie?
Is it the Birds?
This is the Birds from 1963. Of course, Tippi Hedren here in one of the more famous scenes, the phone booth scene. This is for Hitchcock a borderline horror movie. Like he sort of crosses a line here.
What do you mean borderline? It's a horror movie.
Maybe it's not. I mean, but this image, the image I'm about to show you, it's gonna come up in a second, is unusual for Hitchcock. Like this is a step in a different direction. This particular image, and it wasn't just a step in a certain direction for Hitchcock. It was a step in a certain direction for movies in general. In 1963, I mean, this is a very violent image for a 1963 film, but I mean, it works in the film without a doubt. So I don't think there's any question about that. I think it's a master. We talked about, you guys like the tone of Under the Skin. I think this is a movie to study if you want to look at how a director handles tone. Also structure, the build-up of the film I think is really outstanding. The story structure and the way he's the master of suspense, and this is a great example of the way he builds it. I mean, and a far cry from Suspicion behind me here. None of those hackneyed things. I mean, there's still a lot of allegory and other stuff going on, but nothing like heavy-handed or anything. It's pitch perfect in that regard. The other thing that I thought that Jay Money would appreciate is the sound design of the film. Is so brilliant and sort of ahead of its time. The way he uses the sound of the birds or the use of silence in certain moments is just extraordinary. And or a small bird here, and then just like the cawing, just like so many great things. Another controversial ending for Hitchcock. Another ending he wasn't happy with. Although people certainly not as objectionable an ending as a Suspicion. But are you guys familiar with the ending that he wanted?
No, not at all.
I haven't seen this movie since I was a little kid.
You know that here's an image from midway through the film. This is a playground of a schoolhouse. You know that the film takes place sort of in the Northern California area. The characters come from San Francisco to this little town where this first happens. But the last shot he wanted was similar to this shot, except the birds covering the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh wow.
And imagine that shot as the last shot. Apocalyptic shot that would have been, like a punch in the gut to end the movie, which is, I think, how he wanted to end Suspicion, and it's how he wanted to end The Birds. Luckily for us, the ending they came up with was not as, like I said, objectionable as Suspicion. Davey hasn't seen it in a long time. Jay Money, thoughts on The Birds?
Oh, I've seen it. I mean, I own it, and I watch it probably every couple of years. It's a favorite of mine in a lot of ways. It might be the very first Hitchcock film I ever saw, back when I was probably about 10 or 11. And, you know, it's the kind of film that I think a lot of people always talk about and point to, especially for, I don't know, for younger kids at this point, because it is a relatively soft serve, at least for people that don't really take it seriously. But there's a lot of great scenes in this film and a lot of great imagery. And you're talking about sound design, JB. One of the things that stuck out to me even when I was that young was the scene where with the school children and the singing in the background as she's trying to navigate the streets. Like
and not done in like a, also not done, it's sort of strangely subtle for Hitchcock. Like it wasn't like that heavy-handed. Yeah,
but that really burned into me as a kid, and it stuck with me in a lot of ways. And I think for me, I have really grown to love this film quite a lot. And it's interesting because I love the ending as well. I don't really have any issue with the ending. And if
wouldn't you have liked that Golden Gate Bridge one just a little bit more?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I guess I feel like that's a bigger idea, and it would have been interesting to see. But it doesn't really change how I feel about the ending one way or the other. I mean, it's like the kind of thing where, if he managed to see his vision through, then I'd be happier just regardless. But I mean, I think that the point came across for me personally one way or the other. I think at the end of the movie, you kind of get the sense that this is something that's going to be happening in a broader scale. So
yeah, for sure.
Why wouldn't they let him use his ending?
They thought it would freak people out too much. They were like, and Hitch had power, so if they that's how scared the executives were. Like to say no to Hitch was a big deal, and they were terrified that would be too scary.
Wow, that's crazy.
They let him get away with that eye socket shot, so that was sort of the.
Well, thank God they did, because otherwise there's no way to really legitimize the terror and the I think the actual physical effects of the birds. I mean, that really was necessary, I think, in a lot of ways.
Davey, even though it's been a long time, do you have anything you want to say about it?
No, it's interesting that you brought up how ahead of its time it was, and I just went and looked up really quickly. Night of the Living Dead didn't come out till '69, so you're right. It really was ahead of its time.
I've been corroborated, ladies and gentlemen.
68 rather. I'm sorry, but yeah, no, because that's the movie that I think of as sort of the beginning of sort of modern horror at any rate.
Well, I was more talking about the graphicness of the imagery, but by 1968 a rating system was in place. I think the rating system started in 1968, if I'm not.
I think wasn't it because of Night of the Living Dead? I don't know.
No, it was more about because of films like James Bond. The James Bond films and the sexuality in some of those films was pushing boundaries. But also films like Bonnie and Clyde, The Graduate, et cetera, really took it to a point where the nation, or whoever, MPAA was like, all right, we need to step in here because this is getting out of hand. Because obviously these movies are great, but we feel like we can't show them to certain audiences, and how do we manage this? And that's how the rating system was born. Okay, we're good with The Birds, number 4. Moving on to number 4. Birds was number 5. This is a surprise of the list. Lesser known, early Hitchcock, before Hitch was Hitch. Not as early as Suspicion, but certainly early enough. Do you know this film by the photo, guys?
I don't.
No, I don't know this film at all.
This is a film called Lifeboat, based on a story by John Steinbeck. 1944, Hitchcock. And it beats me why it's not as well known, or it's not as among his other his expert his most famous films, because it is so good. If you don't know the story, it is essentially these people, it's the middle of World War II, and they're people on a boat and they get shipwrecked, and they're mostly citizens, except they have one German on there. But they all have to coexist on the boat. So the whole movie takes place on this boat, contained piece on this lifeboat, as it were. And you'd think that'd be limiting to Hitchcock, but he makes the most of it. These characters are so well drawn. It's a terrific cast. I put the cast photo down. I should probably bring it back up. But led by Tallulah Bankhead, if you guys know her. Tallulah Bankhead's the dressed up one in the middle. Just to her right, our left, is Hume Cronin, a very young Hume Cronin, sort of towards the top of the picture, if you can see him. Also, William Bendix, second from our right, is a great character actor. And these guys just really work in harmony together. And it's such taut storytelling. Great. I mean, obviously the Steinbeck material is great, but I mean, like, This is, I think, where Hitchcock made a leap. People love Rebecca. Rebecca's great. It would make my top 10. It's not going to be the top 5. Spoiler alert. But I mean, like, this was after that, and this was, you know, after Suspicion, and after Shadow of a Doubt, I think. And this, in terms of like taut storytelling, this made a leap. None of the melodrama of Rebecca. Again, I like Rebecca a lot, but you know, this like didn't have the melodrama. You know, the acting is sort of ahead of its time. It's really high quality film and underrated as far as I'm concerned. And so, you know, something you guys haven't seen it, never even heard of it. I highly recommend checking it out. It's a special movie.
I mean, do you think it's an issue of timing? It came out at a certain point, especially in American culture, that might have been wrapping up, but you know, like it was sort of. Was it like summer 1944? Was it like the end of 1944?
All right, you're testing me now. I don't know. I don't know exactly when it came out.
I'm just curious how it got passed over in terms of, you know, history. It seems like it came out at a very kind of interesting time period because of what was going on.
I mean, I know that there was a lot of like arguments back and forth with Zelnick. This is still while I was working with Selznick, and like there's all sorts of letters back and forth. I just know that like the movie works right now. Like it hits today. Like it is effective. It's like there's mystery, there's intrigue, there's survival, you know, elements going on. A lot, you know, really great stuff.
Did it humanize the German character?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe that's part of it. Honestly.
I don't know. I mean, like it's not that political. Like
no.
It really. Well, I mean, maybe you know, but it doesn't really deal with the politics. It just is like, should we trust them? Should we not? You know, type thing.
Well, I think if it's 1944 and you're showing a German character on screen and it's not like, you know, it's not propaganda, that's automatically politicizing it in some ways.
Maybe. I'm not sure about that. That's an interesting theory. Davie, do you have any theories of your own?
I don't. I want to see the movie, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I really want to see it actually. Now that you've talked about it, JB, I'm really curious.
I made a recommendation. Now you actually want to see it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Now I do that all the time.
What you do, Davie? You're a trooper. J Money is more suspicious of my recommendation.
Hey, I've had Fury for 8 months. Whether or not I've watched it, I've had it.
Well, you're probably going to wind up watching Lifeboat first at this point, just to piss me off.
Captain Ron first, then.
That's Davie's recommendation. Moving on to number 3, and this is a movie that, and Greg might remember this. The very first movie they showed to us in film class. I'm just making sure I got this right. The very first movie they showed to us in film class. It's a great intro to filmmaking movie. Number 3. In many ways, it's a movie about movies.
Yeah.
Was this the first movie you saw too, Greg, in language of film? He does not remember. He's a little older, so it's harder for him to remember things. You guys know this one, right?
Yep.
Davie?
No, what is it?
J Money, tell him.
It's Rear Window.
Rear Window.
I've seen Rear Window.
Clearly, by the way you recognize the.
It's been a while, but yeah, I've seen it. It's a great movie.
So yes, Rear Window is it's outstanding film. I mean, like all these top 3 are kind of near perfect, quite frankly.
Yeah.
It's a great mystery. It's also a great meditation on audienceship and voyeurism, like on top of everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, you know, like Jimmy Stewart is outstanding, and you know, starting to, you know, drift from his more heroic characters. You know, L.B. Jeffries definitely has like an edge to him, and just the detail with which the supporting characters are dealt with in this movie, you know, really gives it a whole new life. And I swear, this is a movie like I usually like anytime I'm starting to date someone new. Spoiler alert for all you girls out there, I will often show them Rear Window, you know, also because to sort of get them in sync of thinking about movies in a different kind of way. And across the board, you know, they're reluctant to watch it, and then they get into it. You know, it surprises them at how much they're into it. It is, it is a great combination of being audience pleasing and also cinematic. And talk about detail. Check out this amazing real life set. Yeah, Greg has something.
That may explain why you're single right now.
Greg would like to say that explains why I'm single. So.
Are you single?
He's just wondering. So anyway, here is the real life set. And J Money, I thought you would appreciate me pulling this up and referring to it.
Yes. Also, nice one, Greg, is what I would say about that.
Nice he burned me.
JB, question.
Yeah.
Was this ever actually staged, or was it ever actually put on as a stage production?
No, not that I'm aware of. I don't know how Hitch would feel about that, but there was certainly a TV adaptation.
Was there? Interesting. Because
Just remember, it was with Christopher Reeve before he passed.
Oh, interesting.
On ABC. You don't remember that, Davie? You remember that one?
I don't.
It's basically, he was sort of regaining sympathy popularity after his accident, and they were trying to look for stuff for him to do in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And how about this? Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was not the executive at ABC that made that decision. I'm just saying.
Did it work?
They made it. I don't know about ratings or anything. I don't think it was rated very highly, and I don't think it was reviewed very well. But regardless, it's a great film. The Hitchcock version is a great film. And something to look for those when you guys watch it, whether it's the audience or these two guys, there's two storylines, basically. And there is an amazing cinematic, simple gesture that connects the two storylines in such a beautiful way. Like the mystery storyline and the love story storyline, they come together in a single solitary moment/gesture that is one of the most cinematic, perfect things I've ever seen. So that's a little tidbit. If you guys on Twitter have ideas about what that might be, please feel free to tweet at us. That's what we do here. At any one of us, our hashtags are all over the place at this point. Anyway, so that's something to look for and get back to us on. All right, you guys ready for number 2, or do you have more on Rear Window?
No, go for it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Actually, I didn't prepare which stills I was going to show for this one because I pulled it from a previous episode. Number 2. You guys know all about this one. Hello?
Yes.
You guys know that what it is right now.
That is Vertigo.
There we go. Oh, I forgot J Money's blind. There's J Money's Twitter handle, by the way, everybody. So yeah, and I mean we talked ad nauseum about Vertigo already. I mean we also talked to how it's considered the greatest film of all time. And all these amazing things about it. I think. Well, I don't want to say too much, but I mean, like, we talked about it a lot in episode 14.3. You can Google it on YouTube. Or you can Google it you can Google it or look for it on YouTube. We talked about how it's amazing in terms of its mood. We talked about the detail. We talked about the color. Here's an example of the color, the work with color, and how that affected the piece, and also how it's sort of an advance in terms of psychology, like how it deals with psychology of film, and how Scotty breaks down, like his mental facilities, how deeply he's affected by this woman. And I think most people will be surprised to learn it's a number 2, and I'm going to justify that in a second. It's like these are all great, so it's 1 and 1A for the most part, but I'm going to call Vertigo 1A for now. Gentlemen, I know you guys love this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still really on board. I think going back to what you just said about seeing some of the psychological breakdown, I think it's interesting to see that there is a protagonist in this movie that's really troubled. You don't really understand how troubled he is until kind of it progresses through his own detriment. I don't know how much that was something that you would normally see at that time period. I also don't think it was very common for the actor we're talking about in general. So I think that there's a lot of things that are going on in this movie that are really groundbreaking. And I mean,
in our episode, we talked about how great he is. I mean, like Entertainment Weekly said, it's the greatest performance not nominated for an Oscar. I might be on board with that. He's tremendous. Like he's so good in a thing that's way ahead of its time. Like detailed, brave performance. Davey, you have anything to add on Vertigo? I know we talked about it a lot.
No, it's a perfect movie.
So I mean, I don't want you to call out, but do you guys have a guess? Have some thoughts as to what number 1 might be then?
I have a thought as to what it isn't. Because you said it was going to be surprising that one's left off. Are you leaving North by Northwest off?
No, I am not.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
That would have been surprising.
Well, there's one missing here that if you really think about it, that many people would put at number 1, and I see Jay Money's he might be upset here. He's not, and
it doesn't surprise me though.
I wouldn't have put it at number 1. I would have put it in the top 5, but I think North by Northwest is actually honestly one of my favorite ones as well. Psycho is a
that's the missing one. Yeah,
but it doesn't strike me as your kind of movie.
Top 10. And not to say it's a bad film, but there are films that I enjoy a lot more, and I can talk about that in a second. We'll talk about the omission of Psycho in a second, but in the meantime, let's talk about North by Northwest and how I heard one person say once, I think it was actually the Hitchcock biographer Dan Aulier, A-U-L-I-E-R is how you spell his name. I think he said, and I buy this, that we love, and this was his argument for liking Vertigo better, actually. He says we love North by Northwest for its perfection in terms of like the scene, how each scene pushes each other. We love North by Northwest for its perfection, but we love Vertigo for all its imperfections, and how it's sort of loose with narrative and loose with emotions and evocative in that way. I'll go with perfection. I mean, like North by Northwest is so freaking taut. We talked about that with Lifeboat, but I mean, like, gosh, I mean, North by Northwest also is so influential in terms of James Bond and Indiana Jones. These characters that we've talked about in the last few weeks. In terms of heroes in general, it's funny that we don't talk about Roger Thornhill in that way, but he's probably on the list somewhere. Davey, you can look it up if you want to. But I think it's also Hitch's best example of storytelling. The script is perfect, and Ernest Lehman. I think the Writers Guild has it one of the top 5 greatest scripts of all time, and rightfully so. It's so good. And also the really interesting choice to change. We talked about a limited perspective earlier from, when we talked about Hunger Games. And this film has the interesting choice of switching from the limited perspective throughout the first half of the movie, similar to how Vertigo does, and then goes to a general perspective. Like, I don't know if you remember, like halfway through the movie, like pretty much all the little secrets are revealed, and then the rest of the movie is kind of different in a perfect kind of way. And then the other thing that North by Northwest has is the great set pieces. There's a scene at the United Nations, and of course the most famous Mount Rushmore chase sequence. And there's a lot. Hitchcock always loved chase sequences on famous monuments, but this one is particularly special. It's funny. I screened it in New York a couple years ago, and it didn't win at all its brackets, and it didn't land as highly as I thought it should have. Maybe I think Roger Thornhill was maybe a little too flippant at times. For them to take seriously. But I buy this movie hook, line, and sinker. And so it would be your number 1 as well, Jay Money. Did I hear that?
Ooh, it might be. Let me put it that way. I really haven't. I'd have to honestly put a lot of thought into this to come up with.
It's like 1 and 1A with Vertigo, right? Like he made them back to back, and they're just so.
Yeah, I mean, it's again because just to echo a point I made earlier when I talked about The Birds. The Birds is probably the first one I saw in terms of Hitchcock, but I think the very same year I actively chose to watch North by Northwest. I think I made a big deal about watching it for the first time. So it might have been the first Hitchcockian movie I actually literally sat down intentionally to watch, and it made a really big impression on me at that point. I mean, I have it on DVD or Blu-ray, and I watch it every so often because it is a foundational movie for me at that time period. And I've never changed my opinion about it. I've always really enjoyed it. So
they would be your 1, 2, 3 potentially. Greg, what's your favorite Hitchcock?
Favorite Hitchcock?
Yeah.
I think it would have to be Chinatown.
He's-
useless. He's useless.
Talk about a perfect script. That was a perfect script.
That is true. It was a perfect script, and J Money's on board with that comment. But
Yeah.
can you be serious for 1 second? We're live here on television here, whatever, the internet, whatever it is.
television.
Secrets and Lies.
Oh my God! All right, sorry. I thought he would give us a serious debate here, but he's useless. Davie Joe, what do you think?
But can I beg you to just lower the voice?
I will try. We're almost done.
Okay.
This is the end of the
You
night.
can just be-
Well, the portion of the evening is done, so it's good.
So thank God.
All right. No kidding. Give him a little bit of rope, and he milks his time. Davie Joe, what's your number one?
Your top three or my top three, I would probably juggle them up. I think Vertigo would be number one, and maybe.
Davie Joe, I lost you. Sorry. Try it again.
I think Vertigo. Vertigo would be number one.
Hard to argue with that. So you guys want to talk about Psycho, I presume?
I didn't think Psycho would be in your top five. It's not. My guess is that it wouldn't be one of your favorites. I mean, I'm sure you could appreciate it, but not necessarily like it as much as the other ones.
Well, I mean, it's a film that I have to be quieter. It's a film that I feel like it's good film. A lot of great things, but I do feel the manipulation of the audience. And Hitchcock loved to. He said he loved to play the audience like an instrument. Like that was his thing, and I feel it a lot more in Psycho. Like I feel his hand involved, and there's a lot of great things about Psycho. But I mean, films that really I connect with more include maybe an underrated film like The Man Who Knew Too Much from 1956, or Strangers in a Train, or 39 Steps, all of which would make my top 10, ahead of Psycho.
Sure.
So anyway, so that's J Money. Are you disappointed with the lack of Psycho?
Not necessarily. Not for your top five. I mean, I think that I really like Psycho a bit. I don't know where it would actually fall when I had to stack up everything against it. For instance, I also like Strangers on a Train quite a lot. I might even put that ahead of Psycho. I don't know.
I definitely do.
So, it's hard to say. Yeah. There's a lot of good things to choose from. It's really hard to narrow it down.
Yeah. One thing is, I'd also put Rebecca, by the way, ahead of Psycho.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true.
So that's already 9 films I've mentioned, if you include those 4. So with that in mind, just look at that period of Hitchcock's life between 1954, where he made Rear Window, and 1963, where he made The Birds. Like he made Rear Window in that time frame. The Man Who Knew Too Much. Then he made Vertigo. Then North by Northwest, and Psycho back to back to back. Like, are you like? And then The Birds in 1963. So it's an astounding period of cinema, and for a creative zenith that is hard to match. Like maybe you can argue John Ford in the late 30s, early 40s, but it's pretty special. What do you guys think about the top 5 overall?
Well, I like that there's one that I need to see. So that's a lot of fun. I think there's no arguing though with your picks. They're all amazing films. The 4 that I've seen.
Yeah, I think it's good that you included some well-known favorites and some of your own personal picks, and I am not going to disagree with anything you said.
Wow. How's that for the surprise to close out the evening? Some quick Hitchcock notes. Film Forum is doing some Hitchcock stuff this month. As part of their series on production designer William Cameron Menzies, on Saturday, December 5th, they're showing Foreign Correspondent. And if you fans want to come, if you're in New York and want to come join me, I'm going to go. I think I'm going to try and bribe J Money to come with me. Saturday, December 5th, Foreign Correspondent at Film Forum, probably an evening-ish show. And also on December 2nd, for a couple weeks, they're opening a new documentary called Hitchcock / Truffaut, which is based on it's basically interviewing filmmakers about the book in the 70s, I think, Truffaut did a very famous interview with Hitchcock, and he recorded it and turned it into a book. And it's a book like almost every filmmaker's read. I've read it. It's life-changing, and they go through each of his films. And so they made a documentary about the book, which includes taped excerpts of their conversation. Truffaut was not speaking very good English at the time, so there's a translator involved. But it is another thing to check out also at Film Forum, and that opens December 2nd, I think. So that's some goings on in the neighborhood. Davie, Joe, you're going to have to come to New York and experience some of these things.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, Davie, Joe, how about a Homecoming, huh? Come on.
Ooh, is there another movie named Homecoming?
Cute. I wasn't sure that was going.
Sequel.
Yeah.
When I come back.
for our uninitiated, The Homecoming is the name of a feature I made about 10 years ago. Anyway.
With Josh Hamilton.
Yes. And how's that relevant?
I feel like he came up recently. What did he come up in recently? Did we have a
He lives in the same building as Noah Baumbach.
No, that wasn't what I was thinking of, but okay, sure.
I think that's the answer, though. I think that's...
That is how it came up recently. So, so guys, do you have a summary of the? Oh, there was one more thing. Oh, the answer to the question. I don't think anybody responded on Twitter, but if anyone wants to know the previous things that we shot here, was the episode we did on Hot Pursuit, in which we talked about obviously Hot Pursuit, and we talked about The Girl Who Walks Home Alone at Night and Saturday Night Fever. Those were the 3 films we talked about that night. That was in May, and then I returned here in August. I think it was August or September. And in which we talked about, I think it was the beginning of September, we talked about We Are Your Friends, we talked about Enemy here, and we also talked about Philadelphia Story.
Sure.
So those are the ones done here in the Bronx in previous screenings. And those are episodes 9, Hot Pursuit was 9, and the Philadelphia Story, etc., they were all episode 16. So it's something to look for on YouTube, etc. Do you guys have an evening summary?
I would just like to say goodnight to old Greg, who is apparently gone to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Let's all talk in very light, dulcet tones and wish old Greg a pleasant sleep.
I'm sure he will appreciate that.
I'm not going to antagonize Greg because I don't want you to be outside. So I'll just say good night.
Well, this is a thing that happens every clearly it's been every 4 or 5 months I've had to do this at his apartment, so I think he can manage. So that brings us to next time. So we're gonna do it. I didn't think we needed to, but Davie felt differently, and we're gonna swallow the big whale. I'm mixing my metaphors, but regardless. Bringing it back to Pinocchio.
That is.
No, we're not doing the whale.
Questions about your metaphor in that situation, Chief.
We're actually not doing the whale movie. We're doing the.
That's a good point. I forgot about that.
Really good point.
So our next after review is it's actually a month from now. We're back with Star Wars: The Force Awakens, December 21st, approximately either 8 or 8:30 p.m. Stay tuned on Facebook and Twitter for exactly that information. We got to talk about if 8 o'clock is doable. It was a race at least for me, and I think for Davie Joe to get here on time. Now that I'm on the East Coast, and the other thing to bear in mind is it's the last show of 2015. So Star Wars and the Indie and the Classic are going to be our last show of 2015. Stay tuned, for more information, trivia, et cetera, for the Indie and the Classic. That'll be coming out in the next couple weeks. But in the meantime, hope you enjoyed the show. Watch it over again, whatever. Gentlemen, say goodnight. Let's start with Davie.
Hey, it's been fun, guys. Let's do Star Wars.
Jay.
Good night. Let's start with Davie.
And it goes round and round. This sound off was over an hour. It's a good thing the last sound off was so successful. Anyway, good night, guys. It was the Greg interruptions that made it longer. Good night, guys. Enjoy. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your month, and we're gonna unleash the Force when we get back. Have a good time. Take care. Thanks for watching.